Hi, I'm Glenn Whipp with the Los Angeles Times. Joining us today from the ABC television movie Madoff, Richard Dreyfuss, who is playing, of course, Bernie Madoff. I understand that when you heard about this project, you kind of thought, you started waiting by the phone because you thought,
you were going to call me.
Yeah, you were the right person for this role.
Right.
Talk about why you thought that.
Well, when I first started, I had this reputation, right or wrong, that I was cocky and brash and arrogant and blah, blah. And Bernie was that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew how to speak in words in paragraphs and quickly. And
Right,
so,
you could reel off all that
yeah.
salesmanship.
And so I just knew they were going to call me. I mean, it wouldn't have made sense not to.
And then you shared sort of the same location, the same where
We
you were
grew
from.
up
Yeah,
for a while in the same neighborhood, and that changed me. I grew up in Bayside on 218th Street, and he moved into Bayside after we left on 228th Street. So he was 10 blocks away. And I knew every man on 218th Street. They were veterans. They were veterans of two wars, Spanish and Europe. They were all communists and socialists. They loved America like nobody's business. They were the beginning of my moral character, even though I disagreed with their politics. And they all were young men wanting to go into business. Not a business, business. And that's where I began to recognize Madoff. And if you really want to understand him, you should read All My Sons by Miller, because that's Madoff. If the character didn't blow his brains out, he would have given his sons a company rife with American corruption.
Right. Here, Madoff kind of kept his sons
Out of it.
Which is, I mean, what's really interesting about this, this TV movie is broken up into two halves. First scene of it is this family gathering, which, you know, very well-off people, it looks like they should be, it's like the perfect gathering, but immediately you can kind of sense that there's some rot with, I mean, even if you didn't know the story, you immediately sense that something's a little off there.
We created a moment in that scene where he gets a phone call, and while he's playing with his grandchildren who are too young to understand, he's talking real trash.
Right. Yeah, I love that scene. It was great. It's like he takes a little break, and yeah, it's got the little kid there, and immediately you're getting a sense of who this man is. I understand that. Did you kind of restructure the script once you got it to sort of hone in on the character?
Well, I arrived 2 weeks earlier so I could work with the director on the script, so I could know the script and not forget my lines and make sense out of things. And because Madoff, to this day, is a big question mark. What drove him? Who is he? Why did he do it? You know, did they know?
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I learned was that his wife and his kids didn't know anything. And I'll tell you why.
So you're pretty certain on that?
I'm absolutely certain. Where'd you grow up?
San Diego.
And what did your father do?
Insurance salesman.
And when he came home at night, did you ever say, "Are you really an insurance salesman?"
No, that question never
came up.
Right.
Neither did it come up in the Madoff family, or in mine.
I did go to work with him. I saw him.
And so did they.
Yeah.
But it was a division.
In separate floors.
Yeah. And you just took your dad's word for it. And I did too. And everyone did.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a mystery to me.
So it can be that, it can really be that simple. I mean, it's and why did people sign up with this guy? That's another question.
Well, that's the way I chose to play it,
right.
because he had to be the friendliest, menschiest, most comfortable guy in the world. He had to seduce bat mitzvah girls, and he did. And so they gave him their millions because he was just Uncle Bernie. And so he was the nicest guy in the world, except when he was alone or with his fellow criminals.
Yeah. And he kind of sold it as something of, okay, let's come and join this exclusive club.
Yeah.
And that kind of exclusivity really was attractive to people.
People always make a statement about that. In fact, it's the oldest scam in the world. I'm sorry, it's an exclusive club. We have no room for you.
Right.
It's been going on since the millennium.
And they try to talk their way into it.
Yeah, they beg.
Right. I guess it also speaks too of how little most people just think about what their money is doing, who's handling it. You look at the list of people who lost their fortunes or a chunk of things.
What people don't realize is, Madoff said, if they ever ask me what my secret is, I say it's proprietary, and I don't answer. If they get angry about it, I say, take your money out and go. That's the answer that every hedge fund operator will give you. After all the charts and after all the histories, if you say, how do you really make they'll say it's my gut. Well, what does that mean? I can't tell you, it's my gut. That's the same answer. And it's the same scam.
Yeah.
Because it's an odd thing that men who spend their lives making money want their money to make money. So they give it to someone who says, I'm an expert at that. Yeah? Prove it. And no one proves it.
Right.
Hedge fund operators who were created to beat stockbrokers do far less well than stockbrokers. And you get paid a lot more.
Yeah.
The whole thing is corrupt.
It's interesting, in the movie, you see briefly kind of a list of people who were taken in, or shots of people who were taken in by Madoff. You see briefly Steven Spielberg, who obviously you
Jeffrey
worked with.
Katzenberg and Kevin.
Did you ever talk to any of those people about?
The only person I spoke to was a friend of mine who is a writer now. He teaches writing in Denmark because his family lost everything. And he's talked to me about it. And I've talked to the victims, the real victims. But I've never talked to Stephen or Jeffrey. And I would imagine that most of the money that they were talking about were foundation money. And,
right. That's what I understand, yeah.
But what's interesting to me is they wouldn't let us name the culpable banks and institutions that knew what he was doing and allowed it and made money from it for years. And Standards and Practices insisted that they would sue us. And I said, the last people on earth who would sue us are the companies that allowed him to do it, because they'd have to open their books. And they were all.
Yeah.
And so I said, we should be standing on the corner going, I dare you to sue us.
Right, right.
But ABC thought it different.
Yeah, well, that's the amazing thing about watching this, is that he was so easy to catch, but nobody did. SEC, a phone call from the bank. I mean, it was all there. It was
they
for
were making
years.
$300,000 in fees.
Yeah.
Every year. And you put $6 billion in a savings account, and you're required by law to call the government and say, we've got to a big account here. They never called.
Yeah.
And they never copped. And when they did cop, they copped as a company, so the company was fined. Did anyone go to prison? No. So I said, well, can I hold up a 7-Eleven and return the money and not go to prison? There really is a division
Right.
between punishment for the rich and punishment for us. And that's why we started this country, what we meant to get rid of, and it's been a constant battle that we have, at the moment at least, apparently lost.
I understand that Bernie Madoff, he issued a statement after the movie was broadcast, taking some issue with it.
Yeah, not with the performance, but with the film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of the facts he said were.
He said, "I never slapped my son."
Yeah. I mean, literally, who cares?
Right.
Does it matter?
Nope.
I mean, psychically.
I wouldn't call him because of that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk to him because I didn't want to. First of all, I didn't want to make him important. And what was he going to tell me? A Queen's accent? I already have that. And he was going to tell me the truth? Right.
Yeah.
So there was no reason for me to speak to him. He was, when you read Marie Brenner's article in Vanity Fair, when he first confessed, you will never be tempted to admire him again. Mm. He was a monster, a socio-pathological monster.
And there was much made of the smirk, and you guys had a good scene with that, and I mean, I guess it goes back to, it looks like you had a lot of fun playing this part, this monster, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what a great part to play. But I mean, the smirk, and it made me think of, I mean, where does an actor who played Dick Cheney go down the road? Bernie Madoff, right?
Well,
you found another monster.
There's a little bit of Cheney in all of us, and there's a lot of Madoff.
Yeah.
And when you go into business in America, you know that sooner or later you are going to lie to the government on an audit, on a report, on a timing, on a something. You are. It's too complicated not to. And the government has become culpable in allowing it. So I'm scheduled to speak next week to a convention of SEC investigators, as if I slept in a Holiday Express last night and I have something to tell them. I'm an actor and I played Madoff. I have nothing to tell them except as a citizen. And as a citizen, I would say, you don't do your job because you don't have the money and you don't have the resources, and what you should do is sign a document publicly demanding more money so that you could put bad people in prison.
Right. You say a little bit of Cheney in all of us, but a lot of Madoff, so you're making a distinction in quantity here.
Well, I grew up on 218th Street, and I understood, and I played the character in All My Sons. And when I finally got to Madoff, I realized how close he was and what pressures were brought to bear after the war on people starting businesses.
Right.
And so it's like that moment when Meyer Lansky said, you know, at a certain point I made a choice to stay with the prohibitionists and not go with Bronfman and Kennedy, as if they stopped being criminals. And that's what happened to Madoff. He didn't start out being a sociopath. He did exactly what was said in the film. He covered losses with his own money. And after doing that for a couple of years, he realized, well, gee, I could do this.
Right.
And he did it for the lowest of reasons. He did it so that he could have his shirts designed in London. $60 billion he spent on yachts and homes in southern France.
You've had a great career, obviously. People, Academy Award winner, do people remember the movie that you won the Oscar for? If people had to guess.
Most people do.
What would they imagine?
Well, they usually say The Greatest Story Ever Told. Or Birth of a Nation. No, they remember The Goodbye Girl.
Yeah, I just wondered about that, because I definitely did. In fact, I was just watching some scenes of it this morning. It seems like it was on HBO when HBO started on like a loop, because it would have been, right in that wheelhouse. But
it totally spoiled me.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of my career, and greatest people in the world wrote it, acted it, directed it, produced it, and yikes. What people don't realize is that around the year 2000, I really became aware of the possible end of this country. And this country is something important in history. It has meaning. It's something I love, like a Frank Capra film. And my kids were being denied any possibility of experiencing it. And so, without telling anyone, I just left and went to England and studied for 4 years. And what I studied was the damage that was being done to our country by the absence of the teaching of civic authority. And I could take a whiteboard right now, and you could point to any story on the front page of any newspaper, and I could bring it right back to the absence of civics. There's no accountability. Nobody is punished. Financial institutions are lying now just the way they did before. Madoff made no dent. We don't understand the mortgage controversy, the foreign policy of the Far East. We don't understand and comprehend any issue, and they make no attempt anymore to explain it to us. So we go to dinner parties and fake it. And our education is eviscerated. We treat our kids as if they were our enemy, because we've just denied them all of the ability to learn intellectual excellence and the mobility of mind. Gone. It's not their fault. They're really smart, the millennials. They're really smart. They know how to, research and stuff. My kids are both editors of Wired and Mother Jones magazine. But if you don't take, in high school, sewing, English literature, shop, and home ec, you have not a chance in hell of understanding the world when you get out of high school. Home ec allows you to understand finance, and shop gives you self-reliance, and English literature makes you understand pro-imperialism, anti-imperialism. And I just read this book about Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations. And all the capitalists hold up this book as a flag, and they don't realize that in the book, he's totally on the side of labor. He says labor they have unions, they should have unions, they should have a place at the table. They're absolutely indispensable. When you read the whole book, you're shocked. You think he's a lefty. And we suffer from a denial that is so thick that we don't want to do anything. And our system of government demands that citizens do things, active. And if they don't, we're taken over by corrupt clowns. And the comment that Franklin Roosevelt's mother made when he said he was running for the presidency, and she said, "Franklin, it's a step down," is true. Going into politics now is a step down. Mm. There's not one person in politics that you really respect. And what do you do about that? Especially when twice in 100 years we have the same enemy saying, submit or die. Hitler said it, ISIS says it. And ISIS has figured out a way to terrify the entire Western world with less than 1,000 people. And they're going to walk into Disney World with 45 handguns, and they're going to do something so horrible that we throw the Bill of Rights right into the ocean. And when Trump talks about building a wall, we already have a wall. It's called the Bill of Rights. And it has protected us, and we've been admired for it for 200 years. And now we've raised stupid people.
Mm. Yeah, this has been something of a mission for you in
Yes.
the past 15 years or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read where you in your home have a 15,000 volume library. Is that true? You have a lot of books.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where so you have a serious library at home.
Well, I didn't go to college.
Yeah.
So I am what they call an autodidact. You know, I just learn things. I love to read, and so I learn things. And there was a time when I knew everything about the Mongols or everything about the Renaissance, and now I'm in the Civil War.
And it sounds like you're choosing things like this Madoff movie, as well as what you're shooting right now, this Fox series, Shots Fired, that have some provocative things to say. So get into some of these
I think
issues.
I have the most beautiful body of work of any actor in America, because every film I've ever done is reflective of my politics or ethics or morals or principles. And I've never done something that wasn't.
Not too many people would make, so you've never taken a job just because you needed the job.
I took a job once. It was Piranha 3D. Piranha 3D. Just leave after the first 10 minutes, I'm dead. And it's a horrible movie, but when they offered it to me and I said no, I told him about the civics thing I was involved in, and he said, if you had started with civics, I would have said, you had me at civics. And he gave me a check. He was the first guy in Hollywood to give me a check for my initiative. So I said, okay.
So a good reason to do that,
Yeah.
Piranha 3D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was blessed, really blessed. I got to do what I passionately loved, and I was praised and paid. And I can't think of a better way of living.
Thank you for coming in and chatting with us.
Thanks.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
For more of these Emmy conversations, please go to latimes.com. Thank you very much.